Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. This video is sponsored by HarperCollins, but as always, my opinions are completely my own. If you have any questions about sponsorship or disclaimers in any of my videos, I always leave information for that linked in the description. So as many of you probably know, Carve the Mark is the first book in Veronica Roth's new duology. It is released on January 17th of 2017. Now keep in mind with this review, since it is an early edition and there's not everything that's included in here, there is no pronunciation guide. I do not know how to pronounce all of the names. So if I'm getting the names wrong and you guys are watching this like post-release or closer to when maybe names are like announced how they're supposed to pronounce things, then please don't comment and be like, you're pronouncing this wrong, because I'm just doing what I think is best at this point. So this book follows two perspectives. The first one is Akos, who is from the peaceful nation of Thuv, and his mother is an oracle, and it is a pretty peaceful life until one day he is kidnapped by Shotet warriors, who are the rival nation to them, and is taken into their not-so-loving care. The other perspective is Sira, and she is actually the daughter of the leader of the Shotet nation, and she has a unique gift. In this world, there are things called current gifts, and they are abilities that people are given from the current, which is kind of their overarching power energy source. And so people are given gifts, and people are like fated to have certain gifts and stuff like that. Well, she has an interesting current gift, which is used in this kind of warrior nation to cause a lot of harm and cause a lot of pain. So she and Akos end up crossing paths, and everything kind of takes off from there. So first off, when we talk about the world building, I think the world building in this book is the absolute weakest link in this. I think it's pretty messy at times, and it's pretty confusing. I just feel like even at the end of the book, I didn't quite know how things worked, and I didn't think things were properly explained, and since the world has so much to do with the plot, it left me kind of lost at times, because I'm like, how is this possible? How does this work? Like, I have a lot of questions that I just don't feel like were answered, and I feel like they're questions that should have been answered. It's not like they're being left because it's like plot stuff we're going to learn in the second book. It's stuff that you should know towards the beginning and we still didn't know at the end. For example, I'm not sure if this is our world in the future or an alternate world, or our world even exists. Like, I'm very unsure if this is kind of like a sci-fi fantasy mix. I kind of feel like it is. Like, I'm kind of going off of it being like this sci-fi fantasy mix, and it's not actually like a future galaxy of ours. But again, I don't really know. The one thing I did like about the world building is that it is a unique mix of sci-fi and fantasy. Like I said, that's kind of how I take it. It still doesn't do it as good as I think it could be done, because like I said, I'm still very confused by a lot of the world building elements, but I do think it hit those marks a little better than other books have tried to in the past. But the biggest element that I still feel like I don't understand is this whole element of the current. Like I said earlier, there are things called current gifts, and the current is kind of this energy force, from what I'm gathering, that kind of impacts everything. You know, certain religions are kind of based around it, and the gifts kind of come from it, and a lot of things happen around this current. I don't quite get what it is. I don't really understand. It's used in a lot of things. It's used in weapons. It's used for a lot of things, but I don't understand what it is. I don't understand how it works. I don't understand how it impacts current gifts. I don't understand how it affects people. Like, all of these things that I feel like could be answered fairly easily, I didn't feel like we got answers to. So, as I've mentioned before, I don't need complex like magic systems, because it's kind of like, in theory, a magic system. I don't need them to be super, super complex. I like a lot of series that have very kind of straightforward, simple magic systems, but I still feel like I need a little bit of explanation, but like, how though? And there's certain elements that I can't really get into, because again, spoilers, about the gifts and how they work with other people that I don't quite understand, and I feel like there are inconsistencies there, and that is what threw off the book for me so much. Next, let me talk about the characters. I think Sira is the best, and she is my favorite character of the two main characters, as well as all of these side characters. Sira's are the chapters I was always looking forward to. I really like her. She's my kind of character. She's very stubborn. There are elements to her that do grate on me a little bit, but ultimately I did really enjoy her. She's a very strong character, but she's also very flawed. There's a lot of things going on with her, and she's just my ideal type of character. I also really liked, and I'm not sure how exactly this is going to come into play, but Akos' chapters are told in third person, and Sira's chapters are told in first person. And it's an interesting kind of mix, and I'm not sure if that's going to be a device that's used later on for some reason, but I did like that, and it did help to kind of separate the voices of the two characters. Now, I didn't finish the Divergent series, I only read Divergent, so I do know that later on in the series there is some mix-up with like dual perspective, and a lot of people say that you can't really tell like who's who unless you like go back and see what chapter it is. I don't think that you're going to have that in here because it's pretty clear, and I do think that the narrative voices do get more distinct in this book than supposedly they were in Divergent. I do like Akos as well, but just not as much as Sierra, and I did like his and her interactions and stuff, but as far as other characters, I didn't feel like side characters were fleshed out enough at all. I felt like a lot of the side characters were one-dimensional, and I didn't feel any kind of attachment to them, and this world is very volatile and violent, and there's things constantly going on, and I feel like you need a little bit more attachment to even side characters in that instance, because there is this element of like anybody could be lost at any time, but I didn't feel like I cared about that element because I didn't care about any of these side characters really. As I said, this world is fairly brutal, and I did like how the characters were depicted as brutal characters, morally gray characters. You know, this world is very volatile and violent, and there's constantly things going on. It's in turmoil, and I feel like the characters reflected that. They didn't have like they weren't too much one way or the other, and they were trying to survive, and I think that was depicted really well. Last thing I talk about the plot, like I said earlier, I do feel like the plot and the world building are so tied together that the plot was also a little lackluster because the world building was such a mess. So there are a lot of elements that, since they're all tied together, I still don't quite understand, and there's things that are just kind of a little bit messy. I will say that I enjoyed the last like third of the book the most. I think that the first half to 3/4 of the book were a little slow. I wasn't quite sure like where we were going with this. It was taking a long time to get certain places, The pacing was a little bit off, but I did like things that started happening later on and how it kind of took off. And I wasn't expecting it to take that long because it is a duology, so I feel like if it was a trilogy, it would make more sense that it would take a little longer for things to kind of jump off. Where with the duology I expected it a little bit sooner, but I didn't quite get that. So overall with Carve the Mark, I think that the strongest elements were the characters and the morally grayness and the brutality of it. That was very well depicted, but overall I think the pacing and the world building really kind of lacked. So for the first, like I said, 2/3 of the book, I kind of felt like it's at 2.5 stars, but then the very end, I feel like bumped it up to that 3-star level. So I gave Carve the Mark 3 out of 5 stars. So since this is an early review, I will also be doing a spoilery discussion, but that will be posted closer to release date, after release date, so people can actually read it and talk about it with me. And that will not be sponsored at all, but obviously it can be posted until everyone gets their hands on it, because otherwise it'd be pretty pointless. So comment down below and let me know if you plan on reading Carve the Mark. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all you guys soon. Bye!